Okay, thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the Park and Recreation Commission meeting for August 24th, 2021. And before we take the roll, Catherine, I just wanted to note that tonight on television is the beginning of the Paralympic Games in Tokyo, opening ceremonies. The games will run until September 4th, and they are definitely worth watching. So, Catherine, would you please take the roll?
Yes. Commissioner Brown?
Present.
Chair Cribbs?
Here.
Vice Chair Greenfield?
Here.
Commissioner Lemaire?
Here.
Commissioner Moss?
Here.
Commissioner Reckdahl?
Here.
Councilmember Koo?
Here.
All present.
Thank you very much. Are there any agenda changes, requests, or deletions from anybody? Okay, hearing none, let's move to oral communications. Lam, thank you for your help. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak?
We do, Chair. We have one person. The speaker is Paul Goldstein. Paul, if you give us a moment here, we'll get you started and you will have 2 minutes, Paul.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
It's sharing.
Paul, if you would begin, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Paul.
Okay, thank you. Fellow honorable commissioners, I am Paul Goldstein. I'm a member of the Palo Alto Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. And at the August meeting, we sent a note to our staff to please work with your staff to request a change in the signage of Gate D at Foothills Park. Gate D is currently signed, no bicycles, although in fact bicycles are allowed in the Arastradero Preserve up to that gate, and bicycles are allowed on the other side because there's a paved road in Foothills Park. The original justification for this closure was that this gate was opened when Foothills Park was not open to members of the community, except to members, residents of Palo Alto. And the Bay to Ridge Trail ran through it. As a condition of funding, the Coastal Conservancy and the County of Santa Clara requested that pedestrians be allowed through the gate. Now, clearly, to get on that trail, a bicycle couldn't do that in Foothills Park because the trail runs along hiking trails and bicycles are prohibited from that. But at this time, there is really no purpose and to having bicycles not permitted. They're not permitted also to exit the park. And I feel that it makes the government, it sort of creates a bad sense of government actions because it's a prohibition without a justification, without a reason at this time. So those are my comments. I believe a meeting has been set up or will be shortly set up between your staff and some members of the commission. And we look forward to discussing this issue and bringing it to a resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Our next and final speaker will be Monica Williams, and this is the final speaker for oral communications. Monica, if you would begin, please. If you could unmute, please, Monica.
Righto, got it. Good evening, Chair Cribbs and Commissioners. I'm Monica Williams, President of the Palo Alto Pickleball Club. Thanks to the Parks and Recreation Commission and the City of Palo Alto, we now have a thriving pickleball community. To be respectful of your time, I will speak on behalf of all of our members and give you an update. We are on track to end the year with 700 club members, and over 50% of them are Palo Alto residents. Amy, our membership chair, informed us that we are about to reach a milestone. With only 13 more members, our club will include 0.5% of all Palo Alto residents. We are happy to report that other local cities, including Menlo Park, Mountain View, Portola Valley, and Sunnyvale, are also providing pickleball for their communities. Many more young people are now playing, and families are finding pickleball to be an easy sport to play together. This has greatly increased the number of players, many of whom can only play in the evenings. This is why we are requesting that you consider extending the hours to allow more evening play. Currently, every day from 3 to 10 p.m., 2 of the tennis courts are shared with pickleball players who put up 7 temporary nets when tennis players are not there. These 7 nets can accommodate 28 pickleball players or 7 families of 4. At any given time, 16 pickleball players can play on the same amount of space as 1 tennis court, which results in very efficient use of park facilities. Joe Thong, avid pickleball player and retiree from the Palo Alto Fire Department, has created an excellent independent survey of usage on all of the lighted Palo Alto tennis and pickleball courts. We hope this study, which we have provided to staff, will help you understand the growing needs of the pickleball community and the options available. If you're ever feeling down in the dumps, come over and visit us on the pickleball courts. You'll be feeling better in no time. Thank you all for your service to the community.
Thank you, Monica. And Chair, as announced earlier, we were not taking any more hands after Monica.
Okay, thank you so much to the members of the public who came to speak tonight. Let's move on to the department report. Darren, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Darren Anderson with Community Services Department. Bear with me, tonight's department report's a little lengthy. I wanted to give you an update on the skate park progress. The ad hoc and staff had a productive meeting with Sam Kaplinski and some additional stakeholders. And some of the key feedback was that there seems to be support for building a new skate park around the existing skate park. Likely need to hold a community meeting to discuss with the broader skateboard community, neighbors, other park visitors as a next step. But later this week, I've got a meeting with the skate park ad hoc, and we're going to discuss those next steps. An update on recreation summer camps. Camps were very successful this year. Despite continuing to offer smaller group camps, Recreation had over 900 summer camp registrations. There were 160 in-person camps and 37 virtual camps offered this summer. One highlight that the campers shared with me was having Mayor Du Bois visit the last day of the second Citizens Camp. And he made a special appearance on July 23rd at the camp, where campers were building their own small-scale cities with Legos. And the campers built their own versions of the cities, including police stations, schools, and grocery stores. And they were eager to show Mayor Du Bois where his house would be in their cities, and enjoyed hearing about the mayor's duties. An update on how the 4th of July Music in the Park went. Staff reports that it was a great success. Specific head counts are difficult to provide, but there was a large crowd similar to previous chili cook-off crowds. Food trucks, kids' activities, live music led to a very successful event. And Recreation staff is considering keeping that format for future 4th of July events. There's a movie night on Friday, September 10th. They'll be showing Zootopia and incorporating the overall theme on Emergency Responders Appreciation Night. They'll be showing a thank you slide show before the movie, showing Palo Alto emergency responders in action, Palo Alto Police, Fire, and Office of Emergency Services. And they're still working on the possibility of having first responders present to interact with the public prior to the start of the movie. So more information to come on that one. The fall programming for community services will begin registration for residents on August 26th. And non-residents on September 2nd with a full range of class offerings. Coverly facility is reopened for indoor rentals since July 13th. There is an indoor mask mandate for all individuals regardless of vaccination status. On September 17th, the Moonlight Run and Walk is back in person and virtually. That's the 5K walk and run, the 10K run, and the half marathon. Recreation is adhering to the mask mandate, ensuring that all indoor program participants are wearing masks, including rentals, programs, and in-person customer visits. Public Works just advised me this evening that the Rinkanata Park Improvement Project will start in a few weeks, and I'll send you more information as we have it. The Highway 101 bridge is expected to be completed this fall, tentatively the end of October. And there was a question at our last meeting if they're planning a ribbon cutting. Public Works manager, the project manager said they are going to plan a ribbon cutting to happen shortly after the project's completed, but they're holding off on setting a date until they're closer to the completion date. I may have mentioned this in a prior meeting during a department report, but we've had an issue with infill on the synthetic turf field at El Camino Park. This happened back in 2019, and this was due to the properties of the infill later to be determined to be non-compatible with our weather and heat, which resulted in the infill sticking together and clumping. And the vendor came back and replaced the infill at El Camino Park in the fall of 2019. Unfortunately, some of the old infill couldn't be removed. It was down really low and matted in. And over time, it worked its way up. While there isn't a lot, as it's worked its way up to the surface, it continues to clump and cause problems. And so staff is removing that material as they find it, or doing their best to do so. But the bigger problem is that the infill at Palo Alto, at Stanford Palo Alto playing fields, is now exhibiting that same problem of sticking and clumping. It's because it's the same old material that wasn't appropriately rated for our climate. So staff have been working with the vendor to resolve that problem. The unfortunate problem is almost all the contractors who worked on that project have either changed owners or gone out of business. However, the new owner of the old company that manufactured that infill has some remaining inventory of the appropriate kind of infill for our area and will provide it to us at no cost. So we're still working with our attorneys on this issue, and I'll update you when I have a time frame for when we're going to have that infill replaced at Stanford Palo Alto. Sorry, a little bit more update on something I mentioned before, that Rinkanata Park project. Peter advised me that construction will begin on September 14th and is anticipated to be completed December 21st. He says that the entire end of the park will be fenced off during the full construction period. The larger main turf area will not be available, nor will the group picnic area. Recreation staff advised me to give a heads up to the commission that the Cubberley seasonal lighting is coming again. Just a reminder, this is where lights are brought out to extend practice. We've been doing this for several years now. So this seasonal lighting will run from November 8th through December 23rd. Then there's a little break, and then it's January 3rd through March 11th. And that's sunset to 8:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. This is practice time only. The request that all night time activity go through the Cubberley Community Center, meaning no drop off or pick off on Nelson, will continue to be the practice. And Adam Howard said he will send out informational reminder postcards to the homes around Cubberley to let them know around mid-October. In a previous department report, I had discussed the drought and how our staff is conserving water by strategically reducing water in aesthetic turf areas while ensuring that playing fields and areas with trees are appropriately watered. Our irrigation staff are also regularly inspecting the irrigation systems around the city and promptly making repairs or addressing issues to avoid water waste. You may see some non-playing field turf areas that are a little less green than during non-drought periods. And that again is because of this water conservation effort we're making. At our last meeting, there was a question about Foothills annual passes and how they're selling. Has it tapered off? And are we selling them to local or people out of town? Some statistics on that for you. Excuse me, to date, there have been 469 annual passes sold, 7 to low income, 10 for active duty or veterans, and 135 for seniors. 311 of that 469 were passes sold to Palo Alto residents and 158 to non-Palo Alto residents. Sales have tapered off. We're now averaging about 10 to 15 a week. And in that initial first 2 weeks of opening, it was about 200 that we sold when people were rushing to get them. Some additional updates on Foothills Nature Preserve. The hillside barbecues, you might recall the commission had made a recommendation to council, and council directed staff to take action to remove the hillside barbecues. I just want to let you know that that has been achieved, and there's been no negative feedback from park visitors. As anticipated, those were seldomly used, and there have been no complaints. An update on the supervising ranger. This has been vacant for about a year and a half, close to 2 years now. And we did get approval to fill that vacant position, and it is now posted for recruitment. So we're actively working on getting a supervising ranger up at Foothills to help get us back to full staffing, which would be excellent. The visitation at Foothills seems to be holding steady. Still no preserve closures since Easter. And the supervising ranger had shared that for July, we had 26,000 visitors. This is typically our busiest month of the year, and that's about 12,000 more visitors than we would typically get in previous Julys. There's a council study session on wildfire preparedness on August 30th coming up that I think will be of interest to many commissioners. And on the topic of wildfire, the vice mayor had reached out to the city manager and asked if staff could look into the appropriateness of campfires and barbecues in Foothills Nature Preserve, given the wildfire concerns. In response to that, and in addition to some other needs, the Palo Alto Fire Department had a staff person join one of our open space rangers for a site visit, a field survey in both Foothills Nature Preserve and Pearson Raspadero. That happened on July 28th. And they gave some feedback on how the work is looking in terms of what we've already achieved in wildfire protection efforts and what other things we could improve upon. The general feedback was the status of this year's work and the work that's still visible from prior years is considerable and looking good. Staff didn't find any significant issues. They did point out a few areas that need attention and made some recommendations, largely around pruning up trees in select areas, specifically mentioned some eucalyptus trees that should be either heavily pruned or on occasion removed, depending on situation. In addition to that, there were a few other guidances about trimming back some branches around the interpretive center and to keep the gutters free of leaf litter, which we have already taken care of with staff this year. They noted that some continued weed whipping around the perimeter of the maintenance shop, that was also completed by staff shortly after the survey. And to continue our regular practice of removing leaf litter around the barbecues in Orchard Glen and Oak Grove. This is traditionally done where the rangers are regularly clearing out that brush. They talked about the campfire circles, specifically looking at the two that are at Toll Camp. And the current policy is that we are not allowing campfires for this camping season. However, the firefighter said the way they're being maintained, he didn't think barbecues or campfire circles pose a significant risk if they continue to be adequately maintained as they are currently. And that by and large is the findings of that survey. I also wanted to share very briefly, we did a little analysis of what some of our neighbors are doing in terms of campfires and barbecues. So we spoke with San Mateo County Parks. They allow only charcoal barbecues, which is the same for us. And during high-risk days, they may close select barbecues. During red flag days, we close ours. They also don't allow any wood burning in their parks, but they do allow charcoal barbecue in their campground. State parks allow both wood fires and barbecues. And on red flag days, they don't allow either. No charcoal barbecues and no wood fires. However, they do allow propane camp stoves. Santa Clara County Parks, they allow wood fires and barbecues, again, charcoal only. They require a 10-foot clearance around their barbecues, which we meet or exceed. And then on red flag days, they prohibit wood fires, but still allow their charcoal barbecues. The Foothills visitation, I think we covered enough. I wanted to let you know I attended a Hawthorns Area meeting plan today. That was the mid-pen planning process for their Hawthorns Area, which is in pretty close proximity to both Pearson Raspadero and Foothills Nature Preserve. And this meeting was to comment on and review the draft vision and goals for the Hawthorns Area. Their next meeting will be in fall 2021, and they'll present the final vision and goals for recommendation to the board. They'll also discuss the concept of forming a working group for recommendation to the board. And lastly, Chair, I'd like to acknowledge my colleague and friend, Catherine Borquin, who will be retiring from the city this October. This will be Catherine's final Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. And I want to thank Catherine for her dedication, her hard work, and her tremendous contributions to the city over her 31 years of service. And that concludes the department report.
Well, I would just say, Darren, that we certainly would love to echo your tribute to Catherine. We're going to miss you terribly, Catherine, and we certainly appreciate all the years and all the dedication and all the requests, and all done with such cheerfulness and enthusiasm and all of that. So thank you so much. And
You're welcome.
we obviously wish you well. And I'm sorry we didn't have a little bit more notice that this was your last meeting.
That's
Although
been going back and forth.
maybe that was done on purpose. So maybe expect some flowers or balloons or something to come your way at some point if we can
Aw.
figure out where you are. Anyhow,
Thank you.
just heartfelt thanks. And would any of the other commissioners like to say anything quickly? Everybody's good? Okay.
Thank you.
Catherine has been part of this for so many years.
So many years.
One way or another, it's a real shock that you're leaving. But anyway, you've done a great job so far.
Thank you,
thus
David.
far, and I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'd like to say thank you and congratulations as well. It's been a pleasure working with you, especially on the community gardens, and we were deep in the middle of that. That was some great work and passion you poured into that program, and we're going to miss you. And I'm sorry to see you go, but I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
We'll figure it out.
All righty. Thanks.
Thanks so much.
Sure.
Well, all definitely well said, and a big round of applause for sure. Darren, thank you for that very extensive report. Lots of stuff going on, and I suspect that commissioners have a few questions. I have two small ones at the end. So Vice Chair, would you like to ask a question at this point? Do you have any questions?
Sure. I have a couple. You mentioned, Darren, you mentioned that the chili cook-offs or the 4th of July event that staff is considering doing something similar in the future. And does that mean that the chili cook-offs would not be continuing, or could you elaborate on that? What the staff vision is? Is this something added, or is this?
I think vision's probably early. I think these are just initial responses to this different way of doing it. They noted that part of the idea of considering moving away from the chili cook-off part is the challenge of securing chili teams, ticket sales and cash handling, and dealing with the long lines and chili selling out created a lot of negative experiences, which were avoided with this recent event. So I wouldn't say it's a plan, just a thought. And I know they would welcome feedback from the commission on that idea.
Thank you. And maybe if people hear that the chili cook-off might be going away, that might be a good way of spurring new interest, getting people to sign up. Never know.
Perhaps.
Don't know. Thank you. Regarding the drought and strategic water irrigation reduction, a question: if community members see issues, what can they do? Is there someone at staff that should be contacted for this? Is this something that you want to field? Because the community will have questions about this.
Yeah, so there's a couple different things. One is, if it's routine, I don't even want to say browning yet, because I don't think it's gotten that far yet. But if you see less than bright green grass, it's probably not a problem. They're still welcome to always call an email or report on 311 or whatever methodology they'd like to communicate with staff. We'll always welcome that. More often than not, the concerns I get have to do with something more obvious, either a pooling of water, a broken irrigation head where water's coming up directly, a stuck valve where it's very clear that one little area is not being irrigated and the rest of the area is. Those are the things, the sooner the better that we're notified, are really, really helpful.
And is 311 the best way for community members to communicate something like that?
Yeah, I think that's a perfectly fine way, but I just don't want to discourage them from using any other techniques. We get it in every possible way, from people tapping on the shoulder of a staff person they see in the field, phone calls to staff they know, emails to staff they know, or the 311, and all are welcome.
Okay, great. That's helpful. That's all I have for now as far as questions. Thanks, and thanks for the updates on the turf replacement. That's a difficult ongoing issue, and I appreciate the effort that staff's putting into this. It's not something easy to sort out. It is a significant problem, but it's a tough one. And thanks for the update on the Hawthorns as well.
You bet.
Thank you, Jeff. Next question, anybody? Keith?
Well, the turf replacement. So the people who installed it are going out of business, but the manufacturer is not. Out of business?
Manufacturer also went out of business. Another company bought part of their profile, but they're moving out of the infill altogether. This is you might remember, it's called TPE Infill. This was a company in Italy, and they went out of business, but the manufacturer sold off a good portion of their supplies and, I guess, remainder of the facilities or something. And they are willing to honor at least providing us with the remaining infill inventory they have, which is adequate to replace the infill at that site, Stanford Palo Alto.
And is the manufacturer of the turf itself different than the manufacturer of the infill?
It is.
Okay.
And the turf itself is not the problem. It's the infill only.
And there's nothing that this might damage the turf itself.
No, even when the infill gums up very badly, it's easy to separate from the turf. It tends to catch on every player's cleats, and so as they go to the sidelines, you see it a lot there and dragging it to different areas.
Okay, fun.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's on the sidelines because that's where people clear it off of their chute, off of their boots afterwards.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Other questions? David, you had your hand up.
Yeah. How many in-person camps were there? You said there were 37 virtual. How many in person?
Hang on one second. Scroll to that portion of the notes.
Something like
160.
160. That's just incredible. The number of camps that you can have. It's amazing. Also, there was a letter to the commission about Los Trancos trail degradation. Was that something that the Rangers could handle?
Yeah, thank you for that. The Rangers did go out and inspect that a few days after that email came in. One of the Rangers communicated back to the person who reported it, but they went out, examined it. There were no safety issues. It was the routine sloughing. So some of the Los Trancos area is on the edge of a very steep hillside, and regularly there's little washout. So you'll find anywhere between 2 to 3, even 6 foot wide soil that has sort of sloughed off the edge and onto the trail and just has to regularly be cleared. The Rangers knocked it out that day, but it will happen periodically. It certainly wasn't enough to require any heavy equipment. It was just a Ranger and a shovel. There's also no easy fix to say we can do something that's going to indefinitely stop that. The only thing would be relocating that trail to an area where you weren't on such a precipitous drop off. The soil above it is unstable and will continue to do so periodically, especially after storms and things. But so it's something we'll just have to always keep our eye on, but certainly was not a safety issue.
All right, that's great. I was hoping that it was that rather than the influx of visitors destroying the trail, and that doesn't seem to be the case. When is recruiting for commissions? Has that changed?
Yeah, I can get back to you. I'll check with the clerk's office and get you an update on next steps with that.
Okay. And then I asked last time about the triangle of the AT&T property. Were you able to that didn't come over with our purchase. Did you have a chance to at least bring it up with the attorneys or the real estate?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Moss. I did discuss that with Phil Boble. He's Assistant Director with Public Works Engineering and was involved. It's called the Measure E site, and it's 10 acres of land that was undedicated as parkland to use for future anaerobic digester
Oh,
area.
no. I wasn't talking about that. I was talking about the AT&T property next to Bolware Park. There was a little triangle that didn't come across in our purchase.
Yes, I did talk to our real estate agent about that one, and it's not for sale. He'll keep his eyes open if it does become so.
Okay. All right. And as far as the anabolic digester, the 10 acres, what do you know about that?
As I mentioned, I talked to Phil Boble about it, and he's looking into options for how we can go forward with that one. So I think I'll either ask him or one of his colleagues perhaps to come to a future PRC meeting and discuss this.
Okay. All right, that's all that I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Moss. Commissioner Brown? Any questions?
Just a couple of follow-ups on the tree pruning in foothills. The magnitude of that, it's not like clearing massive areas. It's a multi-year effort. I know particular homeowners sometimes embark on these and they can be quite expensive and time consuming. And is it something that can be accommodated with the current budget, or is it going to be something that's going to be planned for? And then sort of following up, is there any work with the arborists with the city to look at tree health in the future? I know it's kind of a preventative, somewhat related, but just anything we can do to foresee any issues that might happen.
Yeah, great questions. I don't believe we'd be able to fully cover the costs of pruning all those trees with existing open space budget, perhaps in combination with Public Works, and we can see what's feasible. There are, I would say, between Foothills and Pearson Rastadero, in the neighborhood of maybe 75 to 90 eucalyptus trees that we're talking about. The really big ones that need the pruning, probably not quite so numerous, but pruning's not cheap, especially in remote areas where they've got to get back there with chippers and heavier equipment to do the work. It also could be possible that some of those would be cited for removal rather than pruning, which is also expensive and also time consuming to go through the process of building support for the removal of those trees. Regarding arborists doing analysis on just tree health and safety, we do get support from Public Works. They have the urban forest team, and they come up to the open space areas and do analysis, not just in the hills, but in all our parks, in terms of whether a tree has failure points. Especially, they're predominantly looking in areas that are close to activity sites, whether that's a picnic, playground, or a trail or something to that effect where people would be, and they'll do risk assessments and help us periodically. For the whole preserve, that hasn't been the case and would be a challenge.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, Darren, I just have two small questions. First of all, you mentioned with the Moonlight Run about the half marathon. Is that new? A half marathon, and if it's new or even if it's not, what's the course?
I'd have to email that to you. I can't share it right now, but yes, the half marathon I think has been part of the Moonlight Run for quite some time.
Wow, I didn't realize that. I must have missed that somehow, which surprises me. At any rate, I just wondered if it was a double loop or if they're incorporating more than the 10K run that we
I think it's just more than a loop. It's a loop on the same thing. Just I looked it up.
A second loop?
Yeah, I think it's multiple loops around the same area.
That second or third. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And then when we closed Rinkanata Park for the renovations, how are we communicating that to the public? Or is it just going to be clear that it's closed?
I think there'll be large project signs posted in a couple areas of the park with a website link. There'll probably be some other methods too that Public Works Engineering is going to utilize, but for sure, large signs in the park will be one of them.
Okay, that's great. And then speaking of that particular park on Rinkanata and on Embarcadero, when you're driving down on the right-hand side going towards Sanford, there are now big swatches of color around about 5 of the eucalyptus trees. Is there, I've been trying to figure out what they're there for.
Don't know.
I'll take a picture and send it to you.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay,
Sure.
well, certainly this is a great report, and I'm sure that all the commissioners join me in saying what a great job staff has been doing all summer long. So kudos to you guys.
Thanks very much.
I know it's been a lot, especially in the time of the virus. So, and all the changes being made. Let's go now to the approval of the draft minutes. And I have a question about the minutes for the 27th of July. David and I didn't get those, weren't able to access those until just a little bit ago. Were the other commissioners able to access them so we can vote on approval of the minutes?
I did not access the July minutes. But I clicked on them earlier today. I did not see them, but I can try to look at them quickly now.
Okay, Keith, what about you? Were
Same
you able
here.
to, were you able
Same
to
here.
get them?
No, this was earlier today, this morning.
Okay, so Darren, that says to me that maybe we should put those off until next month. Does that
Sure.
seem right?
Yeah, Catherine, any thoughts?
We can certainly approve the June ones.
Yeah, we can do the
Yeah,
June
no.
ones. Yes, for sure.
Yeah, the link got broke, so
Yeah.
it's fixed now.
Okay, well, let's do that. And just have a motion to approve the June minutes. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the June minutes.
And a second?
Second,
And any changes or any discussion? Okay, Catherine, if you would call a vote, please.
Sure. Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Chair Cribs,
Yes.
Vice Chair Greenfield,
Abstain.
Commissioner Lemare,
Yes,
Commissioner Moss,
Yes,
Commissioner Rectal.
yes.
4 with 1 abstention.
Right. Okay, thank you very much. And then if we could move the minutes from July to the agenda for the next meeting, that would be great. David, did you have a discussion or a comment about the minutes? Which I would start out by saying, I really appreciate the minutes being done this way. Darren, I don't know if we're really impacting the cost and the transcribing, but I really, when I went back today and was reading them, I really, really appreciated the history and the background. So I'm hopeful that we can continue to do that. I don't know how the other commissioners feel. David, did you have a thought?
yeah. If it's, if this delay is because it's too hard to do in a timely fashion, I did not mind the verbatim minutes if that's easier to produce. Certainly the summary that was done was beautiful, but if you just do the verbatim, that's okay too. So
They are doing the summary. It was just a mix-up of them not knowing that they were to start doing them again. That's why.
okay,
Yes.
okay.
And keeping it to the 2 hours that we've been doing definitely lowers the cost.
That was a lovely way to say that, Catherine. Thank you very much.
What is the
no
relative
pressure.
cost? What is the relative cost for the verbatim minutes compared to the summaries?
They were running about 400. Now it's been under 300
Oh, so verbatim is more
per month.
expensive.
Yeah. Well, she was almost doing verbatim. She says it was hard to do summary, so summary usually takes longer. So that's why I was surprised.
Yeah, verbatim is nice that if you want to go back and search for things, it's easier to search through the PDF and you can search for words and topics. But it's certainly, if you're just trying to get a gist of what's going on, I think the summaries are easier to read.
Yeah, I had no trouble with either of them.
Okay, well, maybe we can review this again in a couple of months and see how we feel about it. Okay, good. Catherine, could you put up the liaison and ad hoc chart, please? And
Chair, before you proceed, Councilmember Ku does have a comment.
I was just going to ask her if she had a comment. Thank you so much, Councilmember Ku.
Thank you, Lam.
Now I see your hand. Thank you.
I was just going to ask, on the verbatim minutes, do they have a software that they use in order to do those minutes, or how does that usually work?
I'm not sure how they conduct it. It's one person and I'm not sure how she does it.
Okay, thank you. I'll find out.
Okay, so Catherine, can you put up that chart? And, to the commissioners, I know that this is tedious to go through this, but it sure is helpful. So let's just start. I think we're going to have a presentation about the tide gate today, but anything to add to this?
Can you make it bigger? Thanks.
Is that bigger now?
One more.
One more?
Okay.
Vice Chair Greenfield?
I guess we could add that we did meet with Valley Water last week to review the presentation and talk about basically some of the finer details and suggestions for how to focus discussion this evening. So just work in preparation for the presentation this evening, working together, trying to find the right solution.
Yep, great. Thank you. Keith, anything that you want to add? Okay, moving on.
Yeah, nothing to add.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the CIP review. David?
Nothing to add besides that. We'll deal with that later in the year.
Yeah. Jeff and Mandy, same with you.
Nothing bad.
Okay. The next one is dog park and restrooms, and I believe we're in the process of scheduling a meeting with the dogs in the community and also getting some information from Stanford. Is that correct, Darren?
Yes, it's in competing priorities with other projects though, like skate park and wildfire and many other things. So it's not being fast tracked. The fast track parts are other restrooms that are happening sooner and sort of independent. They don't need further action. That's Ramos. I think the Roth, for example, Rinkanata. And I think there's another one, but we got movement on those already.
Good, and all the community meetings for those have been done now, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Foothills Nature Preserve, anything to add to this entry?
Yes, I could just add that the ad hoc is working with staff to schedule a meeting with Payback, Palo Alto Pedestrian and Bike Advisory Committee. And it looks like we're trying to meet together to talk about the Gate D concern during the 4th week of September.
Okay. David and Keith, anything you want to add?
No, nothing here.
We're the fact that the number of visitors is remaining at a manageable level means that we have less of a crisis and more controlled discussions, and so that will continue until November or December, when we'll look back over the year. But we did think that maybe we'd have to get back to the commission at the end of the summer, but it doesn't seem like it's that high a priority right now.
Okay. Good. On the fund development, we'll be meeting with the ad hoc to kind of outline what was actually in the minutes and present to the commission in a couple of months, kind of, I guess you'd call it a marketing plan to talk about how to give money to the city and different ways that we can promote the opportunities to give money to support parks and community programs.
So does that include the, some ads?
Yeah. Mhm.
All right, great.
Yeah, so we're gonna take, that was a good discussion last month, and so we're gonna put that into a one page and have a meeting and then bring it to the rest of the commission.
That's great.
Anything, Mandy or Jeff, that you want to add?
No.
Okay, so new recreational opportunities. At this point, we're really just waiting for some feedback from different people that we've reached out to. So just nothing definitive to report. Jeff, anything from you?
No.
Keith? We did get some information from Darren, which we haven't passed along, about the electrical, the wires above the 10.5 acres, but we haven't really done anything with that yet, Darren, that you sent. Yeah, okay.
Where is the skateboard park going to go? Is that going to go under new recreation opportunities?
For now, it is there.
Okay.
And if we, in a couple of months, I think, or maybe more than a couple of months, if it becomes a bigger project that it needs its own, Adhoc will create an Adhoc to take care of that. Darren, that's consistent with your thinking?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, good. Sidewalk vendor policy?
Wait, you
Oh,
missed
you mi-
racket court.
Oh, sorry.
Record, yeah. Mandy and I did have a meeting with staff talking about pickleball and tennis. And also we exchanged some emails now about this universal tennis.
Yeah.
And seeing if right now USTA is the only people who can reserve courts, and can we open that up? And so we'll have some discussions going forward about that. Mandy, do you want to add anything?
Nope, you covered it.
Okay, good. Well, thanks for all your work on that. I know there's a lot of interest in that right now, Keith and Mandy. Okay, moving to the liaisons. I don't have anything specific about aquatics.
Can we talk about sidewalk vendor?
Yes, of course you can. My eyes are certainly not tracking today, so thank you, David. Sidewalk vendor policy.
We've met for many hours and gone through all of the initial input from the attorneys, and now it's back at them. We've finished going through all of it. Took two meetings to do that, and now it's back with the attorneys. So we'll have more to report later in the month.
Jeff or Mandy, anything to add?
No.
Okay, so if I haven't missed any of the Adhocs now, we can move on to aquatics, and I don't have anything to report there. Or at the Baylands 10.5 either, nothing to report of substance. Community gardens.
I met with Catherine to discuss this, and she can jump in and correct me since she's the expert on this. There was I believe an isolated incident with trapping at one of the community gardens, and she was wondering if it was something that we wanted to handle at a commission level, or if it was something that staff could handle. We felt staff could handle in updating the guidelines to clarify the baiting and trapping policy. Catherine, can you correct me if I mess that up?
Sorry, I can't get to you. Oh my goodness.
And
Sorry.
that in the past, when there's issues like that, getting best practices from the other gardeners and the other gardens is really valuable in building community as well. And I know the last big issue was about PVC pipe instead of
Mhm.
something else, and people had lots of ideas. So I absolutely encourage that community building by getting other gardeners. I know everybody else has that same exact problem, to get involved and give input.
Thank
Thank
you.
Catherine, did you have anything else on that? I'm now seeing a gray screen in the middle of everything.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Is that better?
Oh, yeah, it's much better. Thank you so much.
I couldn't find my controls. They disappeared. So I didn't know if I was muted or not. Sorry.
Now that you're unmuted, do you have anything else to add to the community gardens?
I think the whole thing was we just, when we went and got approval or for you guys to review them a couple of years ago, we didn't want to have to keep coming back for approval. So the city manager now just reviews them and gives the approval. But we definitely would incorporate all the gardeners' input too, once we do another draft of including that particular rat control, because we want to prohibit any baiting.
Mhm. Okay, thank you for that. Field users, Jeff?
Continues to be very busy, but no updates beyond what's in the report and Darren's update on the turf replacement.
So it would be easy to say that we need more soccer fields?
That's not really the issue, I think. Here.
No, I know.
I have one quick question, and that is where it says practices are 4:15 to 10:15 p.m. I don't know where there are fields where you can play all the way up until 10:15 p.m. Certainly not Cubberley.
It's the fields with lights. It's Stamford Soccer Complex, Mayfield, and El Camino Park.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Goff?
Yes, I did meet with Lom. The course is busy. It's a stronger pace than last year, and the revenue is going to be more than projected, which is great. We had a question about a youth fee. Maybe it was a couple months ago, and I think Lom did follow up, but just as to talk about that a little bit, we do offer a junior fee, and they can get on the course for $5, and that's after school hours during the week. The one catch with that is they have to register with the National Youth on Course program. And if they do that, they're able to then get on the course after school on weekdays for $5, which I think is a very good thing. Additionally, there are ongoing discussions with First Tee with their proposal that they had brought to our commission. So those discussions are ongoing.
Great, thank you. And how do people find out about the $5 fee for youth?
Lom, are you on right now? And maybe perhaps you could answer that.
Yes, thank you for the question. Chair, there is a National Youth on Course program that promotes the sport of golf and opportunities for youth, and youth is defined as age 18 and under. It's a nonprofit that underwrites the program, and there's about, I may be wrong on this, but there's about 1,500 courses throughout the country that participate in this program. And upon registration with the national program and registering at the participating course, youth, depending on time and date restrictions, can get on the course and pay a $5 fee. And then the national program underwrites and subsidizes another portion of the green fee as well.
That's great. Thank you very much for that. I don't think we have a liaison to GSI. Darren, is there anything that the commissioner should know about that?
No, nothing at this time.
Okay, thank you. Hawthorne area, Jeff?
I appreciate Darren attending the meeting and giving the update today. I was on an airplane, unfortunately, and was not able to attend the meeting, but look forward to giving you an update at the next meeting, after the next meeting.
Great, thank you. And the Recreation Foundation did not have a meeting this month, so I have nothing, no update. Keith?
Yeah, the joint school board meeting was held this month. Nothing that pertained to us.
Okay, thank you.
Keith, what about Cubberley? Is that on the agenda?
There is a Cubberley separate group that meets. And Councilmember Koo, are you on that Cubberley?
Yes, I'm on the Adhoc Committee along with Mayor Du Bois and Councilmember Cormack. And we kind of took a break during the school summer break as well as council's break. But since the school has just resumed, I don't think we're going to be, it's going to take them a little bit of time in order to adjust, and we will be meeting again.
Okay, thank you. Safe routes to school, or safe routes, just safe routes. Jeff?
No specific update. There's transportation stuff going on that's related, but falling under other headings.
Thank you. And we've heard about the skateboard park. Jeff, anything to add?
Nothing additional.
Okay. Sustainability, Commissioner Brown?
It's just I attended the ad hoc meeting. Just want to say staff did a good job of organizing it so that high school students could attend and that they were prioritized to speak. And it was just a very well-run public comment, I thought. The next ad hoc meeting is focused on residential building electrification. And it's really easy to remember because it's on 9/9 at 9 a.m. So if anybody is interested, there's also a great post on the city's Medium page for folks that are interested.
Okay, great. The urban forestry.
Yes, I could add a little bit on that.
Thank you.
So the Policy and Services Committee of City Council had urban forestry issues. Essentially the tree protection ordinance on the agenda this past month, and part of the recommendation was to move forward with the work that we've started some time ago with the formalizing a relationship between the Urban Forestry Department and the Parks and Rec for us to serve as a community forum for urban forestry issues and advise on policy potentially. So this is going to City Council for consideration probably in mid-October, and the Parks and Rec Urban Forestry Liaisons, which is Keith and myself, will be meeting with staff, both with Darren and the acting urban forester, to just review what we've been talking about, and then sync up with the directors of the Public Works and Community Services as well, and that would become part of the staff report recommendation with the City Council.
Okay, Keith.
Yeah, NVCAP is coming back to the council, I think later in the month, or later in September. It's not next week, but it's on the horizon.
Okay, the Ventura plan. Keith, do you want to say
Oh,
anything else?
yeah, that was Ventura. NVCAP is Ventura. Yeah.
All right, that's what I thought. So we'll talk about that later in the meeting today. And then on the Youth Council, obviously there have not met yet this summer, but I'm looking forward to the next meeting that they have. So that completes that. Catherine, are you incorporating those additional notes in this chart, or that will just be in the minutes, right?
It will be in the minutes, but I'll add it if you'd like.
Okay, if you can do that, I think that would be great.
Okay. I didn't want to start typing. I'd mess everything up.
No, I know. I was thinking that as well. Councilmember, do you have any other comments or questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Darren, then we should go now to the park improvement ordinance for the Baylands Tide Gate Structure Repair Project. And this is an action item, so we'll be entertaining a motion after the presentation.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Thank
And
you.
while Robert pulls up his shared screen for the presentation, I'll just really quickly introduce, again, myself. I'm Darren Anderson with Community Services Department, and I'd like to introduce Valley Water staff, Rochelle Blank, Robert Yamane, Sunshine Ventura, Julian, and Alexander Hunt. And I'm going to turn it over to Rochelle Blank, who's the Deputy Operating Officer, who's got some introductory remarks. And then I believe the rest of the staff will be making a presentation to give you an update on this PIO and why we're bringing it back to the commission again. Rochelle?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, and thank you, Darren. Good evening, Chair Cribbs and Commissioners. So I am the Deputy Operating Officer over Watersheds Design and Construction Division at Valley Water, and this project resides under my oversight. So we are here tonight to talk about the PIO for the Palo Alto Flood Basin Tide Gate Replacement Project and the trail work we had planned to complete this fall. I just wanted to provide a summary before my staff goes into the PowerPoint and discusses our decision to cancel the trail work. So Valley Water had initially planned to prepare the trail surface to improve the haul and truck route for ease for the contractor to construct the replacement Tide Gate structure. Due to timing to acquire all the necessary regulatory permits, we decided they were just taking a little longer than we had expected. And after our last update to the Parks and Recs Commission on June 22nd, we received notification from the Regional Water Quality Control Board about permitting requirements, and that those requirements of us to implement this trail work were going to be a little bit more onerous. So it just became clear that there were some disagreements in the trail work requirements that we would need to take time to talk and work through those differences with the Regional Water Quality Control Board. And this would likely mean a delay in receiving the permits and then being able to actually initiate this trail work. And with that, we became concerned that all the trail work would not be able to be completed in one season. So we had planned to do this to improve the conditions for the contractor for the 4 years that the construction project would need to occur over. And because we could not be able to implement all the trail improvements that were needed, and those improvements would be costly still, that they weren't going to benefit the contractor. So with that, we kind of adjusted and looked at what we would need to do, and we went ahead and canceled that trail work. The current trail access road out there is used for maintenance and by maintenance crews, and we were just trying to prepare it for inclement weather in the rainy season. So what we're going to do instead is add additional specification requirements to the contractor for the periods when he's actually doing and performing the construction work over the 4 years. And we won't be adding the geotextile fabric or the aggregate base to the trail that we had planned to this fall. And, I do recall at the last commissioners meeting, there were quite a few concerns raised about that aggregate material and gravel and how it may impact trail users and that it would be out there for approximately 5 years. So with that in mind, and taking all these things into consideration, we are sorry, but we are going to cancel that work. With that, I do want to turn it over to the project manager, Robert, and have him go through his PowerPoint and presentation in detail to kind of cover, my high level overview of this.
Thank you, Rochelle. I'm going to go over I'm going to recap some of the previous slides, but I'll go very quickly through them because you've already seen them before in the last in the June meeting. And then I'm pretty much going to go over some of the same things that Rochelle just mentioned, but with some slides in a little more detail. So without further ado, just want to remind the existing structure was constructed in 1957 and it's about 64 years old. So it's at the end of its expected service life. And it's very important because it provides controls the water surface levels or water surface elevations for the 3 creeks that feed into this for the 100-year storm flood capacity. Also protects against coastal flooding. And the city of Palo Alto operates one of the a motorized sluice gate on one of the bays to enhance water quality in the Palo Alto flood basin. So here's the project location, circled at the top. And like I said, we are going to provide replace the structure to provide existing or better level of service for those 3 creeks. Also to protect against coastal flooding, practically address future sea level rise, and limit impacts to the existing habitat within the Palo Alto flood basin. And we also want to point out that we always coordinate our projects to limit impact to the public. That was definitely one of the things we've been discussing in these with the trails. And I want to point out that the existing tide gate structure is located along the Adobe Creek Loop Trail. And so implementing this project is for the benefit of maintaining the trail. So here's a picture of the existing structure. Some of the existing condition, spalted concrete, it's in a marine environment. This is a picture of the city of Palo Alto's sluice gate where it kind of comes into let's see right here. And so there's cracks and it's weathered, and so it's all kind of at the end of its life. And so this is the Valley Water Operation and Maintenance Trail Surface Improvement work that we've removed from the project scope. And we'll go into this in the following slides here. So as we talked about, the pre-construction trail improvement work is no longer in the project scope. The original intention was to smooth and strengthen and provide an all-weather trail surface for trucks during the 4 years of construction seasons. But the trail improvement work was not going to fully eliminate the risk of possible trail surface damage or levee damage. And ultimately, the permitting requirements led us to reassess this work for several reasons, which we'll get into right here. So yeah, after the June 22nd PRC meeting, we had some discussions, and the regulatory agencies were indicating some other requirements that were going to complicate and delay the start of this trail work. And especially with the delayed start of work, there's just no way that our operation and main staff were going to be able to complete the entire stretch of trail work. And then be reducing the benefit of doing this work for the contractor and the construction. And with that, we reassessed the need for the trail and surface improvement work. And one thing we wanted to point out was, by not installing this trail improvement work, we are eliminating 3 or more months of trail closures that were originally planned for this year. And it would, as we talked about, there was some concern that replacing the dirt with a very hard compacted gravel may not be liked by all trail users. There's some benefits, but we recognize there's an increased risk that the levees may require repairs. But this work would remain during the planned construction seasons over the 4 years. And so the contractor is going to be performing these in-kind repairs to levee surface during the work seasons, the normal construction work seasons. And the contractor will lighten their truckloads to find an optimum balance between the number of truck trips and reduce damage to the levee surface. And we did want to also point out that these levees have been used in the past for major construction activities, such as to construct the existing tide gate structure, which is there now, the City of Mountain View's Charleston Slough tide gate structure, which is also up along the off that levee there, and other levee construction work in the past. So they are, and furthermore, as Rochelle mentioned, we're going to have project specification provisions that limit truck usage of the levees after a significant rain event, and will also require the contractor to repair the trail surface at the end of each work season to the satisfaction of Valley Water and the City of Palo Alto prior to opening to trail users in between the construction seasons. And then finally, at the completion of the project, the contractor will be required to provide a final trail surface that meets or exceeds the pre-construction conditions. This table just kind of shows the proposed, trail closures and ties in with these different trail segments and the different dates, which is one of the attachments in the PIO. Now, one thing I wanted to point out again, there's 2 trail segments where there would be some combined or shared traffic between construction and trail users. The first one is down at the bottom of the screen, which is a small segment. It's actually on City of Mountain View right of way. And this is really just the cross traffic at the intersection of the yellow detour. So that's a very minor, small, we'll have a flagger there. On the red section you see up above, that's about 1,400 feet. So it's a little longer, but we went out and what we had previously showed was a very narrow trail segment there. It's actually, thankfully, this is actually a very wide trail segment, which I'll show you. These are approximate dimensions, but it's this segment of the trail is actually very wide. And so the construction traffic will be on the left-hand side. As you see the picture of the trail on the lower right-hand side of the screen. And then there'll be a portion of the trail user portion will be partly on the flat portion of the trail, but we'll have to utilize some of that shoulder. But we do want to get the city's input on this because we understand the shoulder, it's not that consistent. And so there's some undulations and, it's not as smooth, but there is at least a lot of space there for this shared traffic. And also, as we pointed out on the previous slide, there would not be any construction traffic during the 5-month seasons will be Monday through Saturday and no construction traffic on Sunday. So, this project will allow for continued flood protection and use of the Adobe Creek Loop Trail. The new tide gate structure will be a little bit wider and it'll have aesthetically pleasing railing, new educational signage. And, importantly for the city, this will replace the weathered and aged existing sluice gate system with a new motor-driven sluice gate and SCADA that will provide better control over the water elevations and water quality within the basin. I'm just going to skip over these slides, just showing the anticipated construction traffic routes, which we showed last time. And we're definitely going to work very closely with the city for public outreach, pre-construction public meetings, signage, our website, next door, postcard mailers. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Alex Hunt real quick, just to recap on some of the environmental aspects. Alex?
Yeah, hi folks. My name is Alex Hunt, environmental planner supporting the project. I'll be brief here. I do think it is worth saying it again, that we appreciate the really sensitive environment that the project occurs in. Got a lot of salt marsh, a lot of, the bay, of course, and many sensitive species that occur in the area. And then, of course, the focus of the presentation tonight is really on our work as it pertains to the Adobe Creek Loop Trail, which is, of course, part of the Greater Bay Trail. Next slide. Yeah, so just in general, we really sought to minimize our environmental impacts. As you've probably seen, we've got a very short, a relatively short work window, and that's to avoid impacts to nesting birds, specifically the California's Ridgeways Rail. And then also, we looked at various alternatives here on the project site. All of them really kind of had pretty comparable wetland impacts, but the alternative we selected was the one depicted here, which avoided any erosional impacts on Hooks Island or on the Palo Alto Sailing Station boat dock. And then lastly, we've incorporated a whole host of best management practices into the project description to further avoid impacts. Next slide. And then, as part of our CEQA compliance, we've developed a suite of mitigation measures. These include things like pre-construction surveys or as-needed monitoring for protected species, installing environmentally sensitive area fencing, providing awareness training to contractors, doing fish exclusion and relocation prior to dewatering. And then, of course, compensating for our relatively small wetland impacts by purchasing credits at a nearby mitigation bank. And so, yeah, we completed our CEQA review earlier this year, and we're currently in the process of obtaining all of our environmental permits, from the various agencies shown here. We're getting close with some of the agencies, but discussions do continue, and we're continuing to provide additional information as requested.
right, thank you, Alex. And with that, we'd like to open up for questions.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation. It's nice to have you back again and seeing that this is moving. Let's go around to the commissioners for questions, but let me ask first, Darren, do you have any comments first?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just that I want to thank Valley Water staff for being so receptive to working with the ad hoc. I thought the ad hoc committee did a wonderful job of really digging in to try to make sure we could articulate the reasons for this change. We were sensitive to the fact that we had just come to the Park Rec Commission and asked for approval for this park improvement ordinance, got the approval, and then changed the terms. And I think they did a good job explaining why that was and reacting to some of the concerns from the ad hoc and the commission. And I think we've got a good proposal here in front of you. And from a city perspective, I just want to highlight how important this project is to our community and to the Baylands Preserve. As a former manager of the preserve and a caretaker of that sluice gate that Robert talked about, it's unmanageable at this point, meaning that the water cannot be controlled, which means we're taking 622 acres of wetland in that flood basin and not properly managing it. We're also run the risk of mosquito vector issues. And it's been an increasing problem for the last 5 years that the tie gate structure has been progressively failing. And so any further delays, I'm in great fear of both its flood protection and its mosquito abatement and its habitat enhancement abilities. So I'm really hopeful we can help move this project along and be supportive in any way we can. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Darren. That's very helpful. It's good to know what you're all thinking about this, and I appreciate the work the ad hoc did with you as well. David?
We're doing clarifications now and then public comment, or are we doing?
I wanted to first hear from the ad hoc if they had anything to add.
Yeah, I'd like to go to the ad hoc first, Keith, and see, and
Okay.
then let's find out if there's any public comment at this point. Lam? Perhaps not. So, David, you want to go ahead?
Well, before I ask my question, does the ad hoc want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, one of the questions we talked about during our ad hoc meeting was Valley Water had planned to do this prep work, and that was to prevent damage to the levee. And now we're not doing it. And the question is like, well, why? What risks are we taking? So Robert, do you want to talk to that and just clarify what do we lose by not doing this prep work?
So we have to incorporate now, we would have to be more careful about, since we don't have the all-weather surface, we have to incorporate a waiting period after rain to make sure that the levees, the surface gets to dry out. So we're talking about potentially perhaps a 3-day period after a significant rain event. So there's a little more of the schedule, incorporating these provisions into the schedule. But we believe that there's still time to do this within the tight work windows, but that'll be part of our milestones and requirements in our project.
And if we do see any damage along the way, we'll fix it as it comes. Do you want to talk about the schedule impacts of that?
Right, and we have, yes. So we're going to have that be, a very closely watched item that at the first sign of damage, we'll have to assess, and we'll have an item to do the repair work. And we're anticipating that there will be some repair work that will need to be done over the 4 years. And so we'll have to repair it as it goes within the season. But we think that it'll be quick repairs. The repairing, earth with earth. And so smoothing it out and can be done very quickly.
Okay, and then this is probably for Alex. The fact that we're not doing this prep work, will this do anything to environmentally damage the system?
No, I don't think so. You know, in fact, it might be lessening the environmental impact. You know, we're shortening the duration of work in a particularly sensitive environment. You know, there's the water board, you know, as we kind of alluded to, was concerned with creating kind of more impervious surfaces and the runoff associated with that. And, you know, I don't think the risk here, I don't think isn't that the levee falls apart and trucks fall in or anything of that nature. So, yeah, I think this actually is an environmental benefit.
And Darren or Robert, do you want to talk about at the end of construction, what are they going to do to guarantee that the trail is back to similar to what it is today?
Yeah, I could take a first stab at that, and Darren, you can add. But we'll do a pre-construction survey with the city staff as well to make sure we take really good, you know, video pictures and really documenting the condition of the entire levee trail stretch that is going to be used for construction, and it'll have to be repaired back to, or any you know, the smoothness and the condition of the levee trail surface will have to be put back to meet or exceed those pre-construction conditions. And that'll be a requirement in the project specifications, so in the contract.
The only thing I could add to that is I've worked on previous projects with Valley Water in the Baylands, and there was concern about damage to both the paved asphalt trail on the levee. This is the San Francisco Creek levee, and the dirt levee by the mouth of the creek. And when we finished the project and came back and looked at it, I had pointed out a few areas where I thought perhaps the impacts had changed. And the Valley Water staff had documented every single crack there. They had a photo and measurements. They dropped and took a photo with a ruler down by it. So I was really impressed with their preparation and meticulous attention to detail in terms of those existing conditions. I intend to do that on behalf of the city as well. So we'll have our own meticulous notes on the conditions of those trails. And I'll be right there with Robert and his team, making sure that the city's interests are looked after in terms of getting an end product that we're happy with.
Okay, thank you. Jeff, did you want to add anything?
Sure, I could add just a little bit. I mean, the timing was unfortunate that this went to the Parks and Rec Commission. A PAO was recommended, and then there's a quick change right afterwards. And so it is appropriate for us to review again and understand. I'm very appreciative of the changes and enhancements to the planned way forward slide, and some, you know, really calling out specific steps and articulating the plan and the guidelines a little bit more clearly gives me much more comfort. I mean, I support everything that the questions you've asked, and appreciate Valley Water's responses. I think one thing a question I asked before is when are we going to get the signage up talking about what's going on? Because I think the outreach is really important to communicate this to the broader community, what's coming, and ideally it be communicated when they still have an opportunity to ask questions before plans are finalized. So I don't know if Robert, if you or any of your teammates have an update on when we could expect to see the signage.
We'll have to coordinate. We dropped a little bit of the urgency because of the not having the work planned this this fall or this winter, but we'll get back on that, and I'll relay that information to Darren, who can give you an update on that. But,
thank you, appreciate that, and I especially like the idea of having signs that can be adjusted over time, and so that there's more of a current status update included with the signs. And as I understand it, there's some parts of the sign will be permanent, and some parts of the sign will be updated as the project goes through. Could you comment any further on that?
Correct. That was the idea. We'd have a more permanent metal sign And then we were talking about using a 11 by 17, smaller laminated signs that could be, produced more of them and posted up in more locations, and then updated depending on the season. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. And I do want to highlight that over the course of years that we've been talking about this project, the overall months of trail closure has been decreased. So the overall impact to the community who really does enjoy using this trail, and that isn't lost on the Valley Water staff, but I know that's improved. So that has been very much appreciated. That concern has been heard and has been responded to. Again, I look at the project, and for some segments of the project, some of the trails, or some of the either the north or the south entrance towards the tide gate won't be used so heavily, and so I'm hopeful that any opportunity to open the trail, even the partial trail, for a few days here and a few days there, can be something that can be sorted out. We talked about if the trail is closed due to rain, so it's closed to trucks, for that 3-day period, is it possible to open up the trail to the community for access during those times? And any more thought been given to that, or is that something that we're continuing to pursue?
Yeah, I think we were not sure how to. We want to be careful not to overcommit to. It's just hard to plan that into the construction schedule with the contractor. But we're open to kind of look into with the city and see if there's any creative solution.
I appreciate that. I think what I would be interested in is an approach to revisit this periodically to see if there is some increased access that can be provided pragmatically when the project's underway, and you see that, well, there are some opportunities, but so something to review every at least annually, if not quarterly or semi-annually. The bottom line is, as Darren has said, is this project is critical, and with the work that's got to get done. And I'm really appreciative that Valley Water's taken such a extensive and detailed role in working with the community to sort out how to get this done. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you to the Adhoc Committee for your comments. David, back to you now.
Okay. Yeah, this is one comment about the rain. I just hope we have a lot more rain than we've had in the past 2 years. And I hope it won't impact the schedule when it happens. So I assume you've got in your schedule X number of days of rain delay, but there's really no way we're going to be able to anticipate exactly how many. So anyway, I appreciate the issue. And then the second thing is the weight of the trucks and the number of trucks. Two things that come to mind. One is that obviously, are we talking about double the number of truckloads and half the weight? Or is it, I guess I'm not so worried about that, really. I would rather protect the levee and put aside the extra pollution. But anyway, do you think it's going to be double the number of trucks?
We wanted to reserve some of that for kind of we want to balance the schedule with but also have a proactive approach to addressing if the first sign of damage to have the contractor go back We talked about this with the Adhoc Committee. We're going to look into including in our specs to have a QC manager that, you know, basically requires them to kind of revisit their quality control submittal plan, or, you know, basically how are they going to address the any levee damage. But you kind of take it one stride at a time. You start with the full, you know, fully loaded haul truck. And if there's no signs of distress, then that's okay. And as soon as we start noticing damage, then we reassess, and they're going to be required, you know, through the contract to address that and make adjustments. So we can't, we don't want to say, hey, you can only use half a truck full, and then have it not be constructable in the season either. So they are tight windows.
Yeah, it's a tough conflict. And will these heavily loaded trucks, will they cause additional compaction to the levee and lower the elevation of the levee?
That should be just topical to, you know, rutting in the levee surface, which can be repaired quickly and easily.
And then also, do you have to spray it down to keep the dust down?
Oh, well, yeah, this project is going to have a full, you know, sweepy. I'm familiar with that. You know, I have to follow. It's all the best management practices for construction. We're going to be followed on this.
Okay.
For dust control, water runoff pollution.
Okay. And the last thing is, please no postal mailers. The signs will be great, but you have to send a mailer to every single household in Palo Alto.
Okay.
I'm very much against that kind of stuff.
Okay, we'll take note of that. We'll talk to our outreach team.
Emails are fine. Putting them on websites, fine. Anyway, that's all the questions I had.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Brown or Commissioner Lemaire, do you have any comments to add?
I just have a quick comment, kind of actually building off what Commissioner Moss said about really the trade-offs. It's kind of easy to look at this as a plan B from a plan A, but there are certainly some benefits that I think have been expressed by some members of your team. But it does require more monitoring by the contractor and also by city staff. And I'm sympathetic, especially to city staff's role. Darren, I know you said that staff was going to be able to monitor any impacts to the trails. But is that something that you feel like staff can handle and that they'd be willing and able to take on, or is it something that you have some concerns about at all?
Yeah, good question. The bulk of the staff involvement will be in the pre-construction examination. That's where we want to carefully monitor and document the existing conditions. And then again, so during the project, it'll largely be Valley Water and their contractors doing it, less the rangers or me going out there. And then once that construction season is over, we would again come in and work very closely. So that would be the park rangers and me out there talking it through and looking at it. I think there will be a considerable amount of time just in those, but I'm confident that we can manage that portion.
Great, thank you.
Great, thanks, Mandy. Jeff?
Yeah, just two quick questions. How often do we anticipate the trucks running on the levee? So, you know, for example, during a day and people are out there walking, is there an idea of how often these trucks would be running on the levee?
Yeah, yes, so it would be during the time when they're bringing in new import fill, new levee material, or excavating and taking out some of the old levee material. There would be multiple trucks in those days, and it really just depends on. It's a single lane, and so you might have two trucks come in, fill up, and as soon as they fill up, they're going to drive out. So spaced fairly close together. I can't say, put an actual number on it, but many truck trips. And that's why we do want to, we talked about that trail segment, which is not too long, about 1,300, 1,400 feet, where you have some shared trail traffic. And thankfully, that is a pretty wide portion of the trail. And we're looking into having a barrier, perhaps a temporary K-rail even. It really depends on if the shoulder is acceptable for trail users.
And is this something where it's potentially could be an entire day of trucks running back and forth? Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And then my last question is, we talked about doing this tide gate with 100-year flood capacity. How is that now figured out? Is that a 100-year flood capacity that is determined? I was just wondering about the science of that. I'm a little bit of a layman with that science, and if there's been any updates as our climate changes and so forth when we determine.
Correct. Yeah. So
capacity is.
Well, the way that the tide gate structure in the flood basin works is that Adobe Creek, Matadero Creek, and Barron Creek, we have a 100-year, 1% probability, the statistics on those storm events, 1 in 100 years, and when they come, they require the water level in the basin to be at a certain level, so it provides that capacity to take that storm event for the duration. And then so our hydraulic team has run these numbers, and one of the issues is that as the way that the tide gates work is when the tide is low, it allows the water when the water in the basin is higher than the water in the bay, it pushes those gates open and lets the water up. So as sea level rises and the low tide becomes higher, that becomes less efficient. The gates are open for a shorter amount of time. And so that was one of the factors in the design is, providing a little bit larger opening. And so that was part of the calculations of our hydraulic modeling. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, commissioners. Really, really good comments. I appreciate the discussion. Have one, can you talk at all about changes in the budget because of the changes in the plan? Do you have any able to?
Yeah, it's a kind of an unknown value, but it's a good question, Chair Cripps. We are basically taking that same budget that we were planning to do this trail improvement work, and we're holding this for trail repairs to pay on an as need basis during construction. So it's kind of a wash.
Yeah, and then Darren, to you, following on Commissioner Brown's question about staff time and everything, what do you anticipate, if anything?
That will be changed because of this?
Will there be any, or will you have to pull in more staff to do monitoring? And
I think we were going to have to do that same inspections anyways, even with the trail hardening that was proposed. I frankly could still imagine there being issues and that we would have to do the same sort of inspections. So the same documentation, pre-construction, same end of construction season analysis to ensure that it's held up, and where it wasn't, we make it safe. It might be a little more robust naturally, but I don't think it's going to be overly onerous compared to what it would have been had there been the trail improvements.
okay, thank you. And then we as the commission could ask you to include progress reports in your department report as
Exactly.
that. I think that would be great. I think we would really appreciate that. At least speaking for myself, I know that I would. Before we move on to the motion, Commissioner Koo, do you have any council member Koo, do you have any comments or questions?
Thank you. I did want to ask that or recommend that for communications to the community that the notice be also sent to the city manager's office so that they could send it out through their social media sites. as well as city manager's blog. Excuse me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, Darren, do you have
Oh,
a, go ahead, Keith.
Chair, I have a follow-up question about the rutting. So the trucks are going to drive on this and they may be loaded, so they may be these deep ruts. How do we go about fixing those? Do we just smooth them over? Do you have a compactor that comes back to smooth it out? What's the process
Yes.
there?
Yeah, so new fill would kind of go on top, and or if it was just pushed to the side. But I think, generally you'd add a little bit of fill and have a motor grader kind of go over, and it smooths and compacts as it drives over at the same time.
Okay.
So it would be a pretty quick process to straighten it out.
And then at the very end, when you're all done with the construction, is there anything that you can do to make the surface more bike friendly, to make it more compact and make it easier for bikes with thinner tires? Can you use finer gravel when you're filling in the ruts? Can you compact it better? What options do you have?
I can't speak on that. We'd have to.
Okay, please look into that, because as mentioned before, down by Moffat, that is such a much better bike surface down on the levee near Moffat than is in Palo Alto. And I'm not expecting you to go out of your way to repair it, but if there are small things you can do while you're doing your final finishing, for example, by using finer gravel and packing it tighter, that would be wonderful, because we want this to be a very bikeable route.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Keith. I don't see any other hands from anybody. So Darren, do you have a copy of the motion to put up?
Yeah, I don't have it to put up, but it's in the staff report and I can read it, Chair, if you'd like.
That'd be great, because I can't get to the staff
Sure.
report right now. Thank you.
Yeah, it's that the commission recommends that council adopt and approve a park improvement ordinance authorizing Santa Clara Valley Water District's Palo Alto Flood Basin Tide Gate Structure Replacement Project.
Thank you. Is there somebody who'd like to make that motion?
So move.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. And any discussion? Hearing none. Catherine, would you take the vote, please?
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Chair Cribs,
Yes.
Vice Chair Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Lemaire,
Yes.
Commissioner Moss,
Yes,
Commissioner Rectal.
Yes.
6 to approve the motion as written.
Thank you very much. Robert, thank you very much for your presentation and your work to date, and we look forward to continuing good stuff. So thank you very
For
much
having
for
us.
being here. Thanks. Okay, so let's move to the approval of a memo that we talked about at the last meeting. We have concerns. Some of us had concerns about the Ventura Park project and the fact that there's not a lot of parkland created in the plans that we were looking at. So Keith, would you like to talk about the memo that you created? Thank you very much for doing that. And then we'll have some questions and then see if we can move that forward to push it onto the council.
Okay. So do we talk now or do we want public comment? There's a couple hands up.
I don't see any hands. That's my problem. I'm not seeing that here.
And there are 3 hands,
Okay, good.
but I'm not sure if there is. Lom, are you there?
I am. Chair would like to proceed at this time with the.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'm so glad we have hands, but I have no way of seeing them for some reason. So apologies to everybody. Go ahead, Len.
Okay, we will. Our first speaker is Rebecca Sanders, to be followed by Angela D, and then Jonathan Brown. Like the first prior notifications, we will be closing hands after the first speaker here. One moment here. Rebecca, if you could unmute and begin to speak, please.
Yes, good evening, commissioners. Thank you so much for taking up this important topic. Thank you, Mr. Reckdahl, for bringing this forward. South Ventura has the Ventura Community Center. Central Ventura has Bullware Park, and North Ventura has no parks. And even with the Bullware Park expansion, we will be inadequately served in parkland. And Ventura School really isn't a bona fide park per se, because it's shared with a lot of other organizations. All deserve access to parks. There's no problem there with sharing the park. We just need more of it. So yeah, we just, in Ventura, we just crave parity with other neighborhoods. We don't seem to be served traditionally with the amenities that other communities are currently enjoy in Palo Alto, and that makes us angry and frustrated. And we're really glad that you all are taking this, understand what we're going through, especially with the proposed development at North Ventura Coordinated Area Plan, as well as lots of, say, 50-foot height apartment buildings with 50 units starting to dot the proposed landscape of North Ventura. I mean, where are these people going to play? Where will these families go? Will they be getting in their car and driving someplace, God knows where, so that they can, run and chase their, throw a ball for their dogs and, have a picnic or what have you. So you guys are on the right track. If you could somehow add some statistics to say, hey, this is how many people we have here now. These are how many people that we project will be in Ventura, and look at the shabby amount of parkland. Thank you so much, all of you, for taking up this important issue.
Thank you, Rebecca. Our next speaker will be Angela D, to be followed by Jonathan Brown. And after Jonathan, that will conclude the communications. Angela, if you would proceed and unmute, please.
Thank you. Yes, good evening. I'm here to voice my strong support for Mr. Reckdahl's memo. I have been told that Palo Alto's good schools and wealthy residents have made land here so valuable that it's not financially feasible for our city to meet its own requirements of 4 acres per 1,000 people. Residents of Mountain View in San Francisco, I believe, have the luxury of more park space per person than residents of Palo Alto. Weirdly and improbably, it sounds as if Palo Alto is too wealthy to have ample park space. It's just unbelievable. I don't believe it. I believe that Palo Alto is perfectly capable of finding the wherewithal to pay for its park space. In the coming years, many families will move into dense housing developments in South Palo Alto. Should current residents care about whether these families will have space to relax and play in? Do those who already have enough outdoor space in their own backyards need to worry about those who do not? I am sure that you, the park commissioners, would answer yes, that we must ensure that ample park space is available to all families in Palo Alto. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Angela. Our next speaker is Jonathan Brown. Jonathan, if you would please unmute and speak, please.
Thank you very much, commissioners. Jonathan Brown, chair of the Ventura Parks Committee. I very much support the memo and had similar thoughts when I was listening to a recent hearing about the North Ventura Coordinated Action Plan. It's a great idea to add affordable housing, and there may be some places in Ventura along El Camino and perhaps in the Coordinated Action Plan area to add housing, but we're already underserved in terms of parkland, and we certainly need to add more, and we need to add more than that if we're going to add more people. Park space is a critical part of people's everyday lives, and if you go to Bullware Park, you'll see a mixture of all sorts of people, people who live here, people who work here and live elsewhere. We see unhoused individuals using the park. There's a great demand for parks and we need more of it. So fully support the memo, would support making it an even stronger statement. And I really support the reference to the committee, the citizens like Angela, who have been on the citizen group working on the North Ventura Coordinated Action Plan. And the work that they've done has been really good. And I hope it gets more attention. And I hope the city council goes back and comes up with a really good plan for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. And Chair, that concludes our public speakers.
Thank you, Lam, and thank you to the members of the public who came to speak about this tonight. Keith, let's go to you now.
Sorry, I was unmuted.
Yeah.
Yeah, so some of this comes out of the frustration I had when I was in the North Ventura meetings. It was, let me pull up the memo here. The area plan staff was not convinced that 4 acres per thousand was a real requirement. And so the first paragraph where I talk about the fact that the council twice in the past 4 years has reaffirmed that 4 acres per thousand is a goal for our city. We don't meet it right now, but it is a goal and we should be working towards that. And so that's why that first paragraph has that the discussion of both the Parks Master Plan and also the comprehensive plan endorsing 4 acres per thousand. And then the next one talks about the fact that the North Ventura area plan, the 3 designs, not only do they not meet it, they don't come anywhere close to meeting it. If they were coming in at 3 acres per thousand, I don't think we'd be having this letter, but they were down below 1.5 per thousand. So, and also, as I mentioned, there's some of their definitions for parks are rather loose, like planting strips. You can't, planting strips are very nice features, but they're not parks. And so we really do need to have usable parks. It's just not there for ornaments. You want to be able to have picnics. You want to be able to throw a ball with your kid. And so it's really important that we have real parkland and not just ornamental shrubs here and there. And then the last one was, well, people can go elsewhere for parks. And one of the explicit goals that we had in the Parks Master Plan is that we want parks to be distributed equity around the Palo Alto. We don't want to cluster parks in some areas and then no parks in others. We want parks nearby where people live because that's where they want to use the park. They don't have to get in their car or walk 2 miles to get to the park. So all those things together really means that the North Ventura area plan designs really need to be changed to include more park space. So I'd be interested to see what your people's thoughts are about things we should add, things we should change. This is my first draft. I want to hear your opinions.
Well, thank you, Keith, for putting this together. I know you and I've had a couple of conversations about it and some small changes. And for the rest of the commission, the staff has made just a few minor changes, but I think it's important for the commissioners to have an opportunity to express how they're feeling about it. I would just start out by saying, as a young mother, many years ago, I lived in the Ventura neighborhood on Park Boulevard, and it was very hard to find a park that I could go to with my stroller and my 2 small children. So, and I don't know that things have changed all that much. So anyhow, I would start off with that and ask for comments from the commissioners. David, you have your hand up.
Thanks. One of the speakers mentioned a lack of statistics. And I fully agree with this letter, and it's just the tip of the iceberg. So we need to just go ahead and do this, and for the city council to know that this is just the beginning. When in just this last Friday's Palo Alto Weekly, they have a huge article about the census data for 2020. And I was shocked to find out that in the past 10 years, the city has grown by 4,000 people, from 64,000 to 68,000, and 700 more households. And the only land we've added is the AT&T property, which I'm very happy we did. And but at the same time, we should be counting, I think, Darren, some of the community gardens and that we've added, and also the pickleball courts don't add more square footage, I mean acreage, but we have gotten extensively more usage out of the acreage that we have. And so when I say that this is the tip of the iceberg, we might want to reconfigure how you count that acreage, the 4 acres per 1,000 people. And going back to what Keith just said about ornamental planting versus usable space for throwing the ball around, we have added several dog parks in cubby holes in our parks that until now have been grossly underutilized. And so somehow we have to incorporate that increased usage in the configuration, not just the number of acres, and also to note that Los Altos Hills, and Stanford have very little, if any, parks. And so it's so important that parkland be dedicated because we are satisfying their needs to some extent as well. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, David. Jeff Lemire.
I think this letter is great. I'm in full support of it. I also appreciate the brevity of it in terms of it's succinct and to the point. And I think that's important when we're sending something like this to not get too bogged down in too much detail. Perhaps we could add 1 or 2 more stats or demographics, but I appreciate the sentiment, and I think it's a great letter, and I'm in full support.
Thank you. Commissioner Brown.
She's recused herself, Chair.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. Commissioner Greenfield, or Vice Chair Greenfield.
Thank you. I'm fully supportive of the letter. I think it's very disconcerting to hear, as Commissioner Rectal has pointed out, that staff wasn't clear on the concept or the importance or necessity of the 4 acres per 1,000 feet or per 1,000 residents of parkland. I think it's very important for our group as a body to emphasize this and do our best to make this clear. I think the comments that people can go elsewhere for parks is a real concern, and this is an equity issue, and it's in ways related to, for example, the South Palo Alto Tree Initiative, where the city's working to improve tree canopy coverage in South Palo Alto to decrease the disparity between North and South Palo Alto. And there are important studies showing a direct correlation between tree canopy coverage or shade in neighborhoods and the heat exposure and the air quality and ultimately the employment and socioeconomic benefits to neighborhoods. And so I think this is really important. And I think adding parkland is going to serve a similar directly related benefit to the community. It's going to add more trees, and it's going to add areas for recreation and just general physical health and well-being of the community. I think this is really important to get behind. So I applaud the efforts. Thank you. I will be supporting this.
Good. Thank you very much. It sounds like we have consensus. Darren, do you think we need to have a motion and a vote?
Yes.
Okay. So would somebody like to make that motion?
I move that we adopt this letter and send it out.
I'll second.
Thank you, David, in a second. And Catherine, a voice vote, please.
Yes. Chair Cribs,
Yes.
Vice Chair Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Lemaire,
Yes.
Commissioner Moss,
Yes.
Commissioner Rekdal.
Yes.
That's 5 to approve the memo to council.
Okay, thank you. And Darren did some homework and found out how we best should deliver it to the council. So in the past, it appears that the chair has sent it on to individual council members, which I would be happy to do, Darren.
Yeah, Chair, we can chat about that tomorrow if you like, and we can just figure out the best way. And I'm glad to prep it. So it's all set to go.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me. Thank you very much to everybody. Thanks for taking the time to write a very good letter. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the support.
Moving to the tentative agenda for September 28th. Gosh, it's hard to believe it's September soon. So for our agenda, Darren, thoughts?
Thanks, Chair. We were looking at sidewalk vendor regulations. The Adhoc's been doing some good work. I think we're pretty close, and I believe it'll be ready. The skate park is something I'd like to bring to September, kind of pending the Adhocs thinking and perhaps a community meeting before. Need to think that one through just a little bit with the Adhoc. Informational report from Valley Water on purified water project at the Los Altos sewage treatment plant site, LATP. They were tentative for that, so I'll confirm if, Chair, you're supportive of that happening. And then we had on the Adhoc update on funding as a possibility. And one last one that we haven't talked about yet is potentially having the first T proposal come into the PRC for an action item to recommend something to council.
Well, it sounds like that's pretty full for the agenda. I would really love it if we could move the skate park along. So whatever you need from me to help that happen, that would be great. And I'm excited about the first T appearing. That's good to know. So anybody else want to add anything to the agenda? Okay, good. Good. Well, that
Can we talk about future agendas, just to get his list, add him to the list, even if we don't cover it in September?
We can. You want to do an October agenda, David? That's fine.
Here are some other items that we wanted to add somewhere. One is a purple pipe update. One is a CAL FIRE update. Another one is the anabolic digester. And you just mentioned about the Los Altos sewage treatment plant. So that's, and then also I really want to know when recruiting starts for commissions.
I understood it started this fall. I thought, maybe I'm wrong, but we'll find out. Darren will tell us.
Will do.
Okay, good. So any comments or final announcements? I mentioned the Paralympic Games at the beginning of the meeting. There is an amazing, I don't think you'd call it a promotion or an advertisement or something, but it's called We the 15. And you can find it on a website. It is produced and supported by the International Paralympic Committee, who's responsible for putting on the Paralympic Games. And it speaks to the fact that they are saying that 15% of the world have disabilities. And I think is going to be an excellent opportunity for people to really look at what the Paralympic Games does and what we can all do in the area of disability. So I'm pretty excited about it. I just wanted to share it and get it in the minutes, and maybe we can send the URL out to others in the city. So thank you very much. I did look up the words having to do with Paralympians, and they're words like courage, determination, inspiration, and equality, all good words for us on the Park and Recreation Commission to think about as well. So thank you for letting me say that. I appreciate it. And wish you all a good rest of August and beginning of September with school starting, and Jeff with teams starting inside in the gym, and fingers crossed that everything goes well for the return to school. So Councilmember Koo, anything to add?
No, thank you so much for the meeting. And I just want to wish Catherine all the best in your retirement. Thank you for your service.
Well, that gives us one last chance to applaud Catherine. So there you are.
Thank you.
Very, very much. Bye, everybody.
I appreciate you all.
Thank you.
We do, you too.
Okay.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.